Let's talk about homelessness. And Don, let's start with you. What should the sheriff's role be, as you see it, in this homeless issue?
Well, I think, one thing that Dave alluded to in the last answer was the change in policy coming out of Sacramento that's created a lot of the challenges we are facing in law enforcement in California. So the homeless issue—
You're talking about the early release or the resentencing?
There's several different aspects. We have AB 109, which of course is state prison realignment. Those people, when they get released, reviolate, they come back to the jail. It's a different impact. Prop 47 in 2014 prohibits us from arresting people for violations that used to be felonies prior, and then we have Prop 57, which is a further release of state prisoners into our community, 89,000 statewide, and that's before the court ruling where they now have to allow the same provisions or release of sex offenders. 10 to 20,000 sex offenders now eligible for the same release. That's all resulting in this increased population and contributing to the homeless issues as well, not to mention the opioid epidemic. Prop 47 reclassified felony possession of narcotics.
So it is it's really, when you come down to it, I mean, it is an issue that falls square in the lap of the sheriff. Of
law enforcement and policymakers. It's not just solely the sheriff's problem to solve. We took a leadership role recently, but all the causal factors that led to that, and it's not just the riverbed that we dealt with, it's in Orange County everywhere. You talk to the municipal chiefs of police, Rob Handy in Huntington Beach, and Anaheim Chief, Interim Chief Julian Harvey, and Tom Casella in Orange. The homeless issue has gone crazy. It's not, the county didn't cause it. It's bad policy and release conditions that have contributed to it. Prior to Prop 47, and Dave and I are going to disagree on some of the causal factors. I'll say that now because he's going to go next. But 85% of the population would have been in Orange County Jail if not for Prop 47. We cannot arrest and take people into custody for crimes we used to be able to hold them accountable for prior to Prop 47.
Okay, well, and I am interested in David's take because you have been a lawman and you're now the mayor of a city that is dealing with this. So what's your perspective? Like, what is the role of law enforcement in this?
Well, yeah, I'll agree with Don about the bad public safety policy. It did lead to a lot of the problem, and so did sober living home issues, because they were curbing people. So they would bring them in, take their insurance money, then kick them on the street without any treatment. And those people then basically re-addicted themselves and became homeless. And so that also led to the problem. But anytime you try to fix these things in Sacramento, it's a waste of time. You just can't get them to budge on it. They just don't care. They pass the policy, we don't fight it when they're passing it, and then you have to turn around and try to fix it, and it's almost impossible. So those things did lead to it. Prop 47 got rid of Prop 36. Prop 36 made first-time possession arrests, instead of taking a felony hit on your record, you could go to rehab. And that was an effective tool to get people into rehab instead of just getting a felony and you go to jail. I do have a different perspective on the causation as well. I do blame the county for it. The riverbed in particular, that is a flood control channel that's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's operated by the County of Orange by agreement. The sheriff should have stood up and said, this is my responsibility. They hid behind jurisdictional disputes and case law. That's not what we do. We should have fixed this problem years ago. Had we done that 7 years ago when I was working there and had a plan to fix it, because I was the bike sergeant in North Operations, and we had a plan to fix it, we were told no.
You were told no by who?
By the administration, by the current.
Was that Sheriff Hutchins?
The sheriff, yes, by the sheriff. We were told no, so we didn't do it. So that problem was allowed to fester over the last 6 years. And the problem is now we're dealing with, it's like squeezing a sausage, everything's shot out of both sides. And now
this is fascinating because I haven't heard, I haven't heard this before. So you were what was your plan as the bike sergeant?
What
we did you want to do? How many, there were a couple, were there?
Yeah, there was like there was about 4 to 5 people under every overpass at the time.
Okay.
So you're talking about I don't know.
Not the scale of what it was eventually, like what 500 or something.
Yeah, there was nowhere near that scale.
Okay,
all right. Had we done that, we could have dealt with a lot of these other.
But what did you want to do with those folks?
We were gonna basically enforce the law, the anti-camping ordinance. We were gonna enforce the law, provide them with the services that you have to provide them. You have to just offer it to them. You can't make them do it. You can't take people out of their tents.
So if somebody says, no, man, I don't want to do that.
No problem. No problem. Here's your citation for camping. You can't stay here. And then now we have the foothold.
And now you've cited them, and then you arrest them, and
well, you basically cite them, and you give them a notice that they have to leave. And then so part of my detail at the time had Orange County Public Works, so they were on board. We had contacted the Board of Supervisors, let them know what we were going to do. We actually took one of the, what do you call them, their executive assistants. We took one of their chiefs of staff on a tour to let them know what we were going to do. We contacted county council. We had it lined up. We had to provide them with resources. We had to give them a notice. So you have to basically post a notice like, if you're still here in 7 days, your stuff is gone.
All right. So when you ran it up the flagpole, what did they say to you? Why did they say no? Don't do this.
I assume they said no. I don't know why. We were told no. That I didn't ask why.
All right.
We were told no. We were doing a lot of stuff at the time, so we were just told no.
And Duke, I'll get to you in a moment because I'm sure you want to talk, but I do want to give Don a chance to respond.
This is the difference between a field level supervisor and a manager and executive's experience. So if this was a simple solution, then every other agency in Orange County failed, because every chief could have implemented this. Every officer could have done this.
They could have.
They could have done this, and it would have just been, so everybody failed throughout the county with a very simple plan of just arresting and taking the services that didn't exist. Because that was the biggest challenge that we faced.
So you're saying from a management perspective, what was the problem with that idea?
I'm saying from somebody with 13 years of management and executive experience, the life isn't, the world isn't that clear. You have to look at risk mitigation, litigation, case law, all these other causal factors that contribute to it before you make a shoot from the hip decision just to go out and do something that seems simple on its face but has repercussions. A lot of the driving factors behind this was a lack of services within the county, and you can say that was a county systemic failure, but it's not the county's sole responsibility to provide these services. It's also the municipalities to be part of the solution as well. The services weren't there. Case law says you can't arrest people for simply being homeless.
That's not what the case law says, Don.
It says you cannot arrest people for status violations unless there's services available for them to go to.
See, that's the problem. The real difference is between a street cop and a bureaucrat is I don't hide behind case law. I figure out how to work around it.
I didn't hide behind it. We went on the riverbed and we took kind of the problem.
You clearly stated that it was a jurisdictional problem. There were
the sheriff's
jurisdictional
took a
problems,
leadership role this past year. We got
excuses.
stakeholders to the table, and we dealt with the issue on the riverbed, and we did it without a court order.
You did it because a judge took you around and did it.
No, we did it without having a court and have an injunction or a temporary restraining order. We satisfactorily solved that problem and got those people off the riverbed. Now, it didn't solve homelessness. It dealt with one aspect of homelessness, and we're dealing with the other areas now throughout the county.
Okay. Duke, you want to weigh in on this?
Well, of course. Thank you, Rick. I agree with Don when he said it was a failure to every municipality, police office, police department, and to the sheriff department. But you know, it's a shame that the sheriff department has a bigger geographical coverage area. So eventually, it's going to follow into the sheriff department countywide. So that role should have been initially started with the sheriff department and get all the chiefs together and say, hey, we have a problem. We're not going to shift our homeless folks to your city and then back to the county. We're moving them around, and there's no resolution to this. So, you know, unfortunately, it takes, you know, Judge Carter fact and finding that we have $7 million that has been sitting there not allocating to assist the homeless. The problem is pretty simple. You get some of these homeless people off the street, put them in some sort of housing unit, but also at the same time, you got to put them into a mental health, because we know that our homeless citizens out there need mental health check, need mental health evaluations, and get them to where they need to go to get them off the street. I agree, some of them will not, you know, want to be mobilized in a housing unit, but that's okay as long as we get them that medical treated attention and get them to where they need to go off that riverbed.
Okay, well, gentlemen, on this topic, I did want to ask you something else, because nobody knows better than you. You're the ones that actually, you're the point of contact with these people. Some form of law enforcement usually is the one that makes you know, the contact. 700 roughly people were removed from the riverbed, 200 plus from the Civic Center. Where are they now? Because we know some of them sought help, some of them were put in hotels temporarily. That's almost 1,000 people. Where are those? I mean, if from your best surmise, and I'll start with you on this one, David, your best surmise, where are those 1,000 people right now as we speak?
In hotels in various cities throughout the county, costing taxpayers millions of dollars.
Okay, 1,000. That's where they are. What's your sense?
They're not in motels. There's only one motel contract remaining. It's in the city of Anaheim. Those were a 30-day solution. Most of them didn't see 30 days. Once we knew that there was a high service-resistant population on the riverbed, we satisfactorily got hundreds of people out of the riverbed into services. In fact, one of our greatest accomplishments was when we closed the riverbed, there wasn't one veteran on the riverbed. We had satisfied all the veterans into services. But it was like a hole in water. Once you moved one off, somebody else showed up, and the number wasn't moving. The county had the solution. We were actually down to 175 the week before they announced the motel voucher, and it went up to over 700 in a week. People were flooding back to the riverbed to take advantage of these motel vouchers. That was a temporary solution. It'll never be, I don't believe, ever replicated, but they're not in motel rooms anymore.
What's your best guess or surmise as to roughly, give me some rough numbers if you can, where are those 1,000 people?
Well, it was only 700. The 200
at the riverbed plus 200 something at the Civic Center.
Well, first I think the riverbed was a little different population than the Civic Center. I've heard people reference the Civic Center, that 100% of the Civic Center were narcotic addicted individuals because they had the courtyard right next to it. There were services adjacent to the Civic Center if they wanted them, but they can't go into.
So where are they now?
They're back in the community. They are service resistant people. Most of the people that went to the motels, we knew were going to opt out when given the choice for services. There is a percentage of populations, and some of them are have behavioral health issues, and that system throughout the state has failed.
So you think those 200 that were in the Civic Center, they're just somewhere else? They might be in a field somewhere or on the beach?
They're going to go wherever the path of least resistance is. It allows them to continue the life that they want to live, which is service resistant, leave me alone, let me use my narcotics.
And how about the 700 at the riverbed? What's your surmise as to where they've gone?
Well, and at the last week, 500 came from somewhere else to be on the riverbed. So I'm guessing those 500 who flooded back to the riverbed went back to wherever they came from. We had people who were coming from LA just to get a free motel voucher. We know that was the case.
Wow.
So I think some of them went back to where they were, but this is, I think, the opportunity we have as a county, especially in South Orange County, where we have a strong foothold as a sheriff's department, is to get ahead of that number, do what Dave has been criticizing us of doing, and I have a strategy. I've been talking to city managers to get out ahead of it and start to deal with that population, which isn't nearly as large as the rest of the county. It's only about 280 to 300 unsheltered homeless individuals, and start implementing a plan to get them into services or have other options available to them. They're going to go back to where they can be comfortable.
Okay, and we are doing some shows on the homeless, and while we are posting this on YouTube, we may wind up running this as part of a homeless show and let some other folks comment on the things. I always like to ask people who have some knowledge and familiarity with the topic, what would you do? So let me start with you, Duke. Some really not specific things. What would you do if, let's say, you're the homeless czar and you have the ability to say, we'll put something here, we'll put something here, we'll do that. What would you do to address the homeless issue in Orange County?
Well, I would have spent that $700 million that we have for the infrastructure. I would have get a homeless shelter missions, and then we start having people staying there. And I work downtown LA, and I invite our two, Don and Dave, to come along with to go down to the old missions, or the Skid Row that we call them. There are buildings, infrastructure down there that will accommodate those thousands of people in there. You put bunk bed, you put it, you convert to rooms, and you provide a health service in the area, and all those people will never leave anywhere else. But that's where they're home. That's where they're willing to stay. Unfortunately, we don't have the infrastructure here in the county of Orange. But that $700 million, we can start by spending that $700 million and start an infrastructure. So
you would build a facility, a number of facilities?
I would not build one, but I would overtake a facility and convert it into a mission or a shelter mission.
And do you have any thoughts of where that should be?
Well, I want to make sure that I want to spread those out. I want to make sure there's North County, their facility, South County, and of course
so there'd
also
be regional facilities.
That is correct.
Okay, your thoughts, David. What would you do? And you're a mayor, and I'm sure there's been suggestions. I don't know if you're one of those mayors who is hell no, not here. But some specifics. What would you do? To address the.
Well, the first thing I would do is I wouldn't model my solutions after Skid Row. That has been a problem that's been festering for decades. So I wouldn't model myself after that model, first of all. Secondly,
who's got the Skid Row model?
Oh, he wanted me to come tour Skid Row, like that was the example of what to do.
Okay, all right.
I just don't think that's a good example of what we should be doing. Yeah, the South Orange County Association of Mayors actually met recently. It came up with a solution, and we were immediately shut down. So it's a problem. The NIMBYism problem it's an issue.
Just for the viewers,
Sure.
what was the issue? You guys came up with
So what
something.
happened was
what was it, and who shot you down?
The judge has threatened. David Carr's threatened to issue a TRO, temporary restraining order, against all of our ordinances, enforcing all of our ordinances.
Was this Silverado Canyon?
Yes, the Silverado
Okay.
Canyon,
Right.
and he put that in the south zone. So we selected it as a temporary facility, not for the whole problem. It was just a temporary facility. And that's what he asked for, and we were shut down. So the first thing I would do is I'd make sure law enforcement stayed in its lane. Law enforcement's job is to enforce the law. It's not Don's job to go to the city managers and come up with a solution to where it's housed. That's not his job. His job is to make sure his deputies are doing their job. That's it. So that'd be the first thing I would do, is make sure they're focused on what their mission is. Secondly, what I would do is you have to compartmentalize this problem, because you do have mental health people, and you have the criminals, and then you have people who are truly needy. The people who truly, through no fault of their own, are homeless. And we can help those people immediately. The county was sitting on, it's $200 million in mental health money they were sitting on not spending, and acted surprised when they found it. I think that's nonsense. You've got to put these resources in play. You've got to start helping these people. You have to provide wraparound services. Any kind of facility that you create or you find, it can't just be a shelter. Shelters don't work. All it is a magnet for people who want to come, stay a night, and then they leave, and they go right back to doing what they're doing.
I guess the issue comes down to where are you going to,
you've
got to put something somewhere. Do you have any thoughts? You mayors came up with Silverado, and that got shot down.
Correct.
End of story, or?
Oh no, we're continuing. We've actually, we used to meet only once a quarter. Now we're meeting once a month. We're meeting every few weeks. In fact, we're meeting in 2.5 weeks. Okay. We're meeting again to try to find some kind of solution to help the county with what it's doing. But we don't want to be made responsible for a problem that they basically allowed to fester. The Civic Center issue was in my opinion, that's a failure of Santa Ana's government. It's not my taxpayers' fault. My taxpayers did their job. Okay. We paid our taxes. We supported law enforcement. We supported the government, and they failed. And now they're turning their focus back on us.
Don, you'll get the last word on this.
Well, I'll tell you I'm not going to speak hypothetical. I'll tell you what we did do. And regardless how we got to this, a year ago, I took on the Santa Ana riverbed. I got stakeholders to the table. I got the municipal government proximate to the riverbed to the table and kept them there. And we started working together rather than opposition of each other, and stopped pointing fingers and started being part of a solution. And it did work on that part. Now we're replicating some of these things in different areas. So Dave's comment about having my deputies do their job, we have several homeless liaison deputies. We have a homeless outreach team that's being redeployed to South Orange County on the county's dime to get ahead of it. So we're going to have the informant posture, if necessary, to get there. I've already have a relationship with healthcare agency and have the outreach workers committed to being there. What we need is a city government to do what Dave has been talking about and find the locations in which we can have that entry into the wraparound services. The shelters are the first entry point to get in, to then marry them to services somewhere else. Until that shelter is available, we can't move the needle. Judge Carter has made it very clear he's not going to allow South Orange County to take advantage and relocate people into other service areas. They have to have some skin in the game, his words, not mine.
And I understand the desire as law enforcement people not to start getting into something that's going to alienate the clients you have to work with, but let me try to put you on the spot anyway, all three of you. The Fairview Developmental Center in Costa Mesa, should that be used in some way as a homeless facility? Just yes or no?
No.
I don't know.
It has been rezoned already, so it can't be, but it would have been a great location to use. And this is the challenge I think we have. We have all these disparate areas and nobody wants anything.
If it could be, if something could be worked out there
I think that would be a great location.
You think that would be a good location?
Okay.
I don't think Costa Mesa thinks it's a great location.
Okay.
I don't think they do either, but at least Surveyo wouldn't think it was a great location either if it was in their county.
And how about, I'll ask and start with you, Don. This one was would Silverado Canyon be or have been a good location?
I think it could have been a location for a temporary. I also found a location that got rejected, and it was very similar. So I think that we need something somewhere. And this is what I think is important, Rick, for South Orange County, talking about some of these violations. We have an opportunity to get ahead of it and have service availability, capacity. And if we can get capacity and get ahead of the curve, then we can do the things Dave is talking about. Until that happens, we cannot.
David, what do you think?
Yeah,
obviously, you think
it's not a perfect solution. There's not ever going to be a perfect, but we're letting the perfect get in the way of the good in a lot of these cases. Silverado, it was not to house 400 people. It was just it was a temporary facility for a small number of individuals. The county was at the meeting, told us their services are mobile, so they could take the services to the site.
And maybe just for viewers, since we talked about it, Silverado Canyon is located.
It's off of Santiago Canyon Road, basically between Majeska and Silverado Canyon.
It's one of the more rural areas of
it's rural,
Orange
but it's
County.
Not, it's not wilderness. I kept it's
but
not the wilderness.
And
it's
the people that do live there had a lot of concerns. There was uproar from residents, and
there's going to be uproar no
the
matter
city
where you put
officials
it.
backed away. Or the supervisors backed away. Supervisors backed away. All right, your thoughts on Silverado Canyon? Would that have been a good location?
Temporary wise, yes, but not on a permanent location.
Okay.
I wouldn't have put it there.
All right, fine. Gentlemen, I think we did almost whole nother show. So anyway, thanks very much. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Okay.